All right, hello everyone. I'm Byron Connolly, Head of Programs at Adapt, and today I'm here with Mari Johnson, and Mari is the Chief Executive at the Centre for Digital Business. Mari is a tech industry veteran. She has spent more than 2 decades in senior tech and digital roles across the Australian government, including stints at Department of Human Services, Immigration and Citizenship, the National Disability Insurance Agency and Department of Finance. She's also an advocate for people with disabilities, shining a big light on how they've been victims of a dysfunctional NDIS in Australia. She's also published a new book, Nadia, Politics, Bigotry and Artificial Intelligence, which is described as an explosive story of Nadia, the world's first AI-powered digital human created for people with disability. Mari, welcome, and thank you for joining me and being part of this series of discussions with women working in tech for International Women's Day.
And Byron, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's great to be having this conversation. And as we're speaking, we've known each other for a long time. So I really, really thank you for this.
All right, no worries. Great to have you here, Mari. Now, in the early days of your career, you worked at the National Crime Authority as a team leader of an intelligence unit on an international organised crime task force. You're also the team leader of a strategic analysis intelligence unit at Victoria's State Revenue Office. Now, this was the early days of the internet in the 90s, and these roles were high-tempo environments where tech was essential to decision-making. So what attracted you to them? You studied arts and law as well, so why didn't you go in that direction instead? What attracted you to these types of roles?
Well, none of these are on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
My career goes back too far, but this was the early days of the internet. In fact, a couple of these roles preceded the internet in terms of wide adoption in government. But I've always been fascinated by technology. And you see in the background here, this is the my picture when I was at the 2011 launch of the Space Shuttle Atlantis.
Yep.
And even as a kid, I wrote to Neil Armstrong, and I have a letter back from him, which is on the wall.
Really?
Yes. So my interest in technology has been through my entire life. And at school, I studied Year 12, 4-unit maths and science. So it's been through my entire career. So it hasn't been something that has, there's been a particular decision point. It's that I have a wide range of interests. And studying, doing the arts law, well, it was arts actually first up, and more social science and strategic studies, where I actually studied weapons systems for defence, and also trade in resources and uranium. So my interest has been about the societal-wide application of technology, and how technology then is utilised in various complex systems. And so that's sort of been my trajectory, and that landed me in intelligence. And from there, I did my MBA at the Melbourne Business School. When the year 2000 then was coming along, and everything just exploded. So serendipity perhaps, but a lifelong interest.
Yeah, for sure. And you're certainly in the right area. Now, you were working at the National Crime Authority in 1994 when a drug trafficker by the name of Domenic Perre sent a parcel bomb to a Detective Sargeant Geoffrey Bowen's office in Adelaide. Now, this was a revenge crime over Bowen's investigation into Perre's family drug business. Now, you wrote about this in mid-2012 in Evasion Oz, where Perre was ultimately found guilty of the crime. But I guess for the benefit of the viewers today, what was your role in this case? Because it's very interesting.
So I was a team leader of the intelligence unit at the National Crime Authority office in Melbourne. And it was operational, which meant that there were investigations worldwide, in fact. And my job was taking all the intelligence that was coming in and using it in a way, or using technology in a way that would discern patterns of connections between people and time and products and so forth. So I also assisted in about probably about 18 coercive hearings that the National Crime Authority held. So it was like a small courtroom where people are compelled to answer questions and my job was to feed the data to the solicitor cross-examining the witness. And back then, I had huge live arch folders. So, so there was no laptops or anything like that. It was really quite manual. But in the office, we had using the latest link software technology, and my role was to look at some of these patterns and then advise the chief investigator as to potentially who to go and have a look at. And then that would sort of flow into investigations. Intelligence would come back, and we'd do triangulation of a whole bunch of different things, and then feed that back into coercive hearings. And at the end of all that, my job was then to write up the report. So we always knew that this person was a perpetrator. The day it happened, the day this bombing happened, I actually was on the phone to Adelaide and in the morning, and I just hung up the phone, going about the morning business, and then the whole office came to life. It was like, what's happening? And somebody said, something's happening in Adelaide. And I said, I've just been on the phone. And it was sort of not long after that obviously the bomb had gone off in Adelaide. And it was on our investigation. So we didn't know at the time whether we would be next, right? Because there was a number of officers. And so what happened then was the office was locked down. We had all sorts of bomb squads, other agents, intelligence agencies come in, and because I was doing the intel, it was a really, really, really intense period of time, not knowing that we could be next. And so how to evacuate people, how to get people out. If there was an evacuation, was that a trigger? So it was really quite an interesting period of time. But what I took from all of that was a couple of things. The value of leadership, and the chief investigator who was in the office, a brilliant police officer, the value of intelligence, and the value of decision-making in very complex environments. You never get anything right. So this was one of the lessons. So so it really changed the way in which I saw how people in decision making and also complex systems all interact. So that's why I wrote that article.
Yeah, for sure. It was a very early lesson for you, wasn't it, in terms of how people and systems do, as you say, do interact, and I mean, it was obviously a very scary time, I guess, for a lot of people, but you learned some key lessons there, I'm sure. I there wouldn't be many other women that could talk about their career in STEM starting that way, I'm sure.
It was terrific. It really was. And at the time I was studying law, and the subject I'd been studying at that time was property law. And I thought it was just so boring that I then went to the Melbourne Business School because they had advertised for the MBA and about this new program that was going to also have technology and e-commerce and innovation. And I thought where I've been was all of that with the National Crime Authority. So I discontinued the law and immediately started the MBA, which I finished.
Yeah, you did. Now, Mari, there's been numerous studies and articles over the years that suggest many young women around the world naturally gravitate to humanities and arts when selecting a career path, while young men tend to go into STEM. So there's a lot of studies and articles around this. So there's lots of anecdotal evidence of that. Why do you think this is the case? Is it just that men and women are different? I mean, that a larger proportion of men are more interested in technical subjects than women, and that's why we see the disparity? Or do you think it's something else?
So stepping back, I sort of see it as a visibility and storytelling issue.
Yeah.
Right. If we look back to the early 2000s, so after I came to the APS, around the table then were women. You know, women in Centrelink, CSIRO, finance, industry, immigration, all around the table. And even though we knew we had the numbers against us in terms of, you know, diversity and progression, it wasn't unusual to see this gathering of immensely brilliant women with qualifications in all sorts of areas, technology, STEM, engineering, and so forth.
Sure.
And it was also the time when, if you like, the digital infrastructure of government was being put in place.
Yeah. And
there were no stuff-ups.
Yeah.
Right? What changed, taking this historical perspective, was the Gershon Review.
Yeah.
Right, which was a doctrine that outsourcing would be better. Yeah. And homogeneity through that would be better.
Yeah.
And with that outsourcing and then the insourcing of consulting services, this absolutely changed. And around the table now, you see pretty much all men at that same table. So looking back, I sort of see what my career and life has been, which an absolute fascination in the Apollo program and space. And we need to tell those stories. Women have always had a role, in fact, not a role, have been leaders in technology, from the Apollo program, you know, the hidden numbers story, all the way through. The problem I see is that it's one of a narrative and storytelling. I also think the education system is a big issue here as well. You know, but there has to be these stories about how brilliantly exciting this era is, and working in technology. And it's not all about.
It is. It's amazing.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I love telling the NCA story. You know, but yeah, like, so is it that you know, males go into technology and women go into science or into arts? Actually, I think arts is part of the story as well. You know, and we see now in gaming. So I'm an avid gamer, and but also in movie production, and game is very much a high resolution animation. They themselves are entertainment. So that's come from sort of a creativity perspective as well. So I just think the narrative here needs to change. And why wouldn't these, if you like, surveys include nursing and medicine? Well, nursing is obviously one of those female-dominated areas, but it's highly technical. You know, nursing degrees, study science, your lives depend on it. So I think the narrative around some of this needs to perhaps be broadened, so that then it becomes visible, so that young girls, females, can see themselves in the diversity of roles, not just what might be presented as these boring backroom enterprise IT type of situations.
Yeah, because that's not the reality anymore. And arts and science,
absolutely not the reality.
Arts and science go hand in hand, and anyone that says that that's not the case is wrong, right? I think that's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
There is a push for diversity targets now in organisations, in technology groups. Sometimes I feel if you push that too far, you can end up with people in the wrong job, where you set targets 50-50 and the like. What are your thoughts? Do you think that's the right way to go about it or not?
Again, I'll come back to visibility. So the visibility around the table in the early 2000s, when there were those wonderful women around the table, is visibility. I sort of see that when people are talking about targets, they're after something which is visible.
Yeah.
And if the visibility of the actual person and people around the table being not women are not there, then the default for visibility is a target, because I can see that, right? Yeah. It's not even a proxy though. So I understand where it's coming from, but I see it not only as problematic, I see it as it obviously won't solve the problem, because the problem is cultural. You know, so look, my journey has been, if you like, non-traditional in so many ways. You know, excuse me. I mean, I was married as a teenager and I had kids very young. So there's that me. But then I was also awarded, excuse me.
That's okay.
You'll have to cut this bit.
That's all right. Take your time.
I was also awarded an O visa, which is a visa when I was moving to the United States to take my role up with Microsoft, which is for people with extraordinary skills and experience. Now, I didn't get that visa because I was a woman. I got that visa because I was the best in the world for the job that Microsoft were wanting. And so I sort of say that, yes, aspire to be the best, but it's about the visibility of diversity that will bring about the cultural change.
Cultural change, yeah.
The targets won't do it. And if I could be a little bit sort of pointing to, yes, Minister, there was an episode where Jim Hacker wanted to implement a 25% quota for women leadership. And Sir Humphrey responded that it takes time to do things quickly, and with an immediate start, we would eventually be at 25% in top jobs in 25 years.
Yeah.
You know, so I understand targets, and maybe that's part of the story, but I think we need to be careful that targets don't distract from what's really happening. I mean, there's lots of targets around closing the gap with Indigenous outcomes and all of that. And with all of those targets, there has been utter failure.
Yeah.
Because the focus is on the target number, not actually on what's happening.
Yeah, and on cultural change and on
yeah.
sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking about cultural change, this is a bit of an elephant in the room here. I mean, women that I've spoken to over the years, and I've been, writing about IT for a couple of decades now, are adamant that men need to change their attitudes and behaviours towards women. I've heard more than a handful of shocking stories firsthand about harassment in the workplace in tech. It seems to me like this is an issue that nobody necessarily wants to touch. I mean, what are your thoughts? What have you experienced? Anything on this front? Do you know of anyone that has? Do you think it's an issue? Do you think that men need to play a larger role here?
It's a big issue. And I'd have to say it happens. Probably the bigger elephant in the room is when women do this. Right? And that has been my experience with both men and women. So yes, it's probably, if you like, more of an issue involving men, but I don't think we can say it's just a men issue, right? I think it's again a cultural issue, and what happens in environments where diversity is not valued, and that can be both sides. And what is the pressure cooker like in these environments to actually, cause that to happen and to permit it to keep happening? So as women speak up against this happening in the workplace and elsewhere, a lot of it is involving men, but equally, I think both sides need to be honest about this. This is something that behaviour that is exhibited by both men and women. And it would be a very difficult thing for a man to make a complaint against a woman doing this. So
than the other way around. Yeah.
Correct. So I come back to culture, and also whether it's the man or the woman, but we're speaking about women specifically here, to have the resilience to be able to, and the network to be able to speak up, and in a way where their concerns can be heard, because it's likely happening to others, and that's the issue.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the tech sector is not the only industry that faces these particular problems. That happens everywhere. It's just the way humans are sometimes, unfortunately. Now,
that's right.
The tech sector, of course, is full of people who are quite neurodiverse, right? And you said you're neurodiverse as well, so you're an example. And this is a good thing because it creates stronger teams. It certainly does. Having people that think differently across teams is a wonderful thing. Do you think, however, this may be an issue for some women who have more typical personalities?
It's an interesting question because, where there's multiple types of difference for a particular person or personality, in an environment where the whole environment is geared towards homogeneity. So the homogeneity in recruitment, or homogeneity in standards, which are good, it's homogeneity in standards on all sorts of things. People who are different are sort of, not only are outliers, but sort of contrast with that homogeneity. So the diversity and that level of difference, neurodiverse, etc., is the very things that bring about change. When I was at the NDIA, I had an amazing team of people, neurodiverse, physically disabled, people with cognitive disability, working with people with intellectual disability as well. And, homogeneity in that environment, what does it actually mean? But what came from that was this incredible diversity of thinking and experience. And going back to where we started about having people around the table in the early 2000s, it was the diversity that actually created breakthroughs.
Helped.
So I think coming back to the neurodiverse thinking, creating breakthroughs disrupts the status quo, and not always in a bad way, but this disruption does create, cultural challenges for organisations. So I've always fully welcomed neurodiverse people, myself being in that environment, and I have family that are neurodiverse as well. So it's the only context that I actually know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, it's always good to have people that think differently. I mean, and as you say, there have been times in your career where you've had neurodiverse teams and they've been helpful. It's always great. It's actually, I mean, because ultimately everybody's different, and it's about finding finding an in with each person and finding something that you can, I guess, what am I trying to point out here? Find something that you're both interested in, that you can both communicate very well, and find some common ground, I think, is probably the best way to do it, despite the fact that you think differently. Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you have any mentors or role models who have been again, I guess, instrumental in your tech career? Who are those people?
Yeah, so I mentioned the chief investigator at the National Crime Authority. Wonderful man. They're brilliant, and he was a wonderful mentor as well. I stayed in contact with him for many years, and he was a person who basically let me spread my wings. In an environment that was, had such a high operational tempo, and had such such riding on everything that was done in terms of, you know, people's lives and all the rest of it. And it was immensely liberating, but also it meant that I felt immense loyalty to this chief investigator. He was the one who said, whatever technology or this new technology, right, go for it, right? Just let me know and we'll do it. Now, I always think that also that mentors come and go in your life. You know, they're different points in your life. And I've also had phenomenal departmental secretaries in the APS who I've also stayed in contact with and have been there at different points during my career. And then there's also people who are outside your professional career. I've got a number of just amazing people, people in the disability community who I've also learnt an enormous amount from. So mentors, I see are like a mesh through your life. All right. Not just one, but a mesh. And you have got a responsibility to also be a mentor, to give back to other people as well. So that's my view of mentoring and mentors.
Yeah, they're great because you learn something from everybody, don't you? From every mentor that you have, and you carry it through your career and your life as well. I know that I've had a few as well, and I've learned something. And I always think back to what those particular people taught me about all sorts of things. Now, your book on Nadia, I know that I did mention Nadia at the beginning of this discussion, and of course, it's the first AI-powered digital human created for people with disability. You've written a pretty explosive book on that. What prompted you to write that, and what have you written about, just for the benefit of viewers? It's available on Amazon, by the way, at the moment, isn't it? Right now, they can get it.
It's available now for pre-order. Publication is the 16th of February, which probably will be available when this goes to air.
Cool.
This week. So,
so I know it's a long story, but if you can encapsulate it in, a couple of minutes.
It's an historical account.
Yeah.
So this is the first time this has been done globally for service delivery. And I talk in the book about other sectors such as healthcare and access to justice, where some global luminaries have picked this up and have spoken about how this can be used and how it is continuing to be used. So the story is about what happened. And what happened behind the scenes with the exploding robo-debt catastrophe, and how culture in that environment not only played out with robo-debt, but basically affected everything. And it was the robo-debt culture that caused Nadia to be shut down. And what is being written about in the media in the time since has not been a complete story, right? So, and I think that is to the detriment of Australia, and also disrespects people with disability who actually created it. So it's an historical account to support research for organisations that would be undertaking research, to support the understanding of culture in public sector innovation, and also to really put the truth out there as to what has happened. A colleague has said that this book will be seen as an essential academic reading for at universities for the design of digital humans. So
excellent. Well, that's great. Good to hear. Yeah, because there's going to be more of it in coming years, and if we, I guess the robo-debt debacle kind of put a dampener on everything, didn't it? People are untrustworthy, don't trust governments now when it comes to the rollout of automation technologies, and I think it's going to take a long time to trust this type of stuff, and I'm sure you would agree.
Trust, it all comes down to trust, and I talk about that in the book, on the basis of trust.
Okay.
So,
Murray, we've got a couple of minutes left. What's your your final piece of advice, I guess, for young women on this International Women's Day looking to really build their careers in technology?
My advice to everybody has always been have a plan A and a plan B, a long game and a short game. Sometimes we play the short game because we have to, but think about the long game as well. Other areas of life that interest you, and these things can dovetail through life. Build in resilience, to what it is that you do, either through networking and through reading broadly. That will open up your options in terms of not only your career but also other aspects of life which you cannot even plan for, and you'll have that adaptability to meet the difficult times that will come, and they will come either personally in life. Life can throw up some changes and challenges that you don't expect. But if you've got resilience in your own personal outlook and in your career, then you'll be able to navigate whatever your career and whatever life brings you. But ultimately, I always say, be positive, be upbeat, and just go for it, and never take no for an answer.